Hi, welcome back to our mentoring session. In today's video, we will be answering one of the common questions in thesis writing. We will be dealing with these questions as quickly as possible. Okay, so here. Now, these are some related comments or questions coming from the students or from the researchers. First, what are some considerations in writing scope, the limitations of the study? Second, when to use limitation as a term and the limitation as a term also in writing your chapter 1, because limitation, scope and limitation of the study is part of the chapter 1. Another question is, what are the differences between limitation and delimitation? Okay. Now, study limitations and delimitation differentiated. Okay, so watch out for this. Now, when you use limitation, then it refers to the perimeter or boundary of the study. Now, it can be composed of, the subject, the title itself, the study area or the locale of the study, the location of the study, the research instrument being used, like a survey questionnaire. Is it an interview instrument or interview guide? Is it about secondary data generation or gathering? Time frame, of course, the when aspect of your study, when is it started and when it was ended, population or universe, who are this group of people or groups of people given the instrument, and answer them as required in the instrument. Who are this group of participants, and the issues to which the study is focused. Ano-ano ang mga issues, like, is it social issue, economic issue, political issue, industrial issue, or technological issue, environmental issue, and all. So we are referring to the variables of the study, whether primary variable or secondary variable. It is within the intention and control of the researcher. So take note of that. When we say limitations, the focus is about all these variables and factors that are within the control of the researchers. All right. So these are also factors that specifies the limits or extent of the study. Now, if you are working on an undergraduate study, basically, ideally, it is um, also affecting the extent of the study, the scope. It is a bit smaller in scope compared to the masteral studies or doctoral studies. So, yun ganon. Now, the other one is when to use the limitation. So, if limitation is about the variables or factors that are within the control of the researcher, now in the limitation, it refers to the constraints or weaknesses of the study. As we all know, all studies naman has its um, uh, weakness, and constraints. Like, for example, if we are going to mention some of the constraints and weaknesses in the study, like, for example, um, your study is being affected by the calamity, disaster, okay, and even the dishonesties of the respondents, lying, they're not giving the right information. So these are the constraints and weaknesses, actually, which are beyond the control of the researcher. Okay? Kuha po. So, yan. Now, factors that at some points delimit the researcher. All right. So that's why the term used is scope and delimitations. So now it is already clear that scope and limitations refers to the variables and factors no used in your study that are within the control of the respondent. So basically these are factors found in your SOP or statement of the problem, and those variables found in your methodology. Everything. The limitations refers to the factors, the variables in your study that are beyond your control, rather. All right? So, there. Now, for some explicit reasons, researchers use limitations. So, usually, ito ang ginagamit natin, scope and limitation of the study instead of the limitation. However, anyways, now, emphasizing on the use of limitation, you as a researcher may say, okay, this study is limited to the following variables, such as, then you mention what are those primary and secondary variables no, that are included or being included in your study. And these are basically found in your SOP, statement of the problems, everything in there should be part of the limitations, and of course everything in the methodology in your chapter 3, yung methodologies. All right? So you mentioned them because everything is within your control. Kayo ang nagtatakda eh, 'di ba? Kayo ang nagtatakda ng ilan ang respondents, kailan ito gagawin, saan, paano. So si researcher ang nagtatakda. Of course, no, bear in mind that everything you designated, okay, is approved by the advisor or the panel. Now, along the way, it is also important to mention variables that delimits naman your study. No, say this study is delimited to the following variables such as. So you mention now those factors or variables that are beyond your control as a researcher, but you believe no it will affect in one way or another no on the result of your study. Now, for example, calamity, disaster, no, it can affect maybe depending on the situation. Sometimes your study is also affected by the dishonesties of the respondents. No, those who are lying, those who are not telling the truth. Okay, for example, um, uh, family income, how much, and they're not telling the truth. Okay, and other questions, no, that are prone to, lying, no, on the part of the respondents, and even the time pressure may also affect, lalo na kapag masyadong rush, no, mabilisan yung study, or there are changes in the timeline as you conduct the study. Better mention also that so that the reader will know what the limits no your study. Okay, so now it is already clear no how to start writing and saying no all these areas that must be mentioned or presented under the scope and limitation, or the scope and the limitations of the study. Okay. Now, start writing your scope and limitations. Now, you need to, as a researcher, you need to present the boundary coverage of the study in terms of the subject. Ito na yun. These are the variables that we were saying. No? These are the variables found in your SOP or statement of the problem, and those found in the methodology. So, yan. Ito yon. These are the important um, aspects that you need to present. Then another is you as a researcher will present, no, you will define the constraints, the weaknesses that are not within the control or that are beyond the control of the researchers. Like for example, you know, as we have said, calamity, disaster, the dishonesty, the time pressure, and everything, no, that you actually experience as you go about working your own study. So you know the limitations, you know the variables that are beyond your control, but um, definitely might affect your study as far as the result of your study. Okay po? Alright. So I hope everything is better and clear to you now. Now, if you found this video helpful, please smash the like and subscribe buttons below. Thank you very much.